London, Surrey, Little Whinging, Privet Drive, number 6. On the perch specifically for owls to rest, black and white owls stood staring down. Beside the old brick fireplace, a beagle lay there with its 4 paws in the air, exposing its belly. Their master, John Wick, was facing a big problem. On the television news was reporting a sudden incident during a car race held in Monaco. A man holding electric whips in both hands, with something like a light bulb on his chest, burst onto the track. With one whip from this reckless man, a certain billionaire playboy driving a car almost met his end right there. Fortunately, the other party took out a suitcase, transformed into Iron Man, and successfully resolved the crisis. The television was turned off, and John fell into deep thought. This unremarkable news revealed 2 pieces of information. First, in this world, there was a Stark named Tony, but not a hairdresser. Second, that person named Tony Stark had many prefixes, one of which was Iron Man. Although it had been a long time since he came to this world. I am Iron Man. This one sentence allowed a billionaire playboy, who was also a super genius graduated from MIT, to completely transform. Even after a long time, it was still enough to make people recall it upon seeing it. So, you're telling me this place is actually even more abnormal? John Wick, who was a worker on a certain blue planet in his previous life, was born in a British family in this life in 1980. His mother was Slavic, and his father was British. In the West, where the peak of attractiveness is generally short-lived, he successfully maintained his appearance until now. And the person in that mirror, if you told others he was almost 30, they would only think you were joking. Black hair, reddish-brown eyes, he loved vest suits paired with a gold watch chain, a silver ring and an emerald ring on his right hand, full of mystery. His handsome face, brought by his British and Russian heritage, looked like a student who should be attending university. He once studied at Hogwarts, created the Philosopher's Stone, defeated the Dark Lord, and became the new Wizard King. Currently, he was the son of a British wealthy businessman on vacation. But now you're telling me there's a person named Tony Stark in this world? John felt he needed to calm down. Although he had already reached the pinnacle of the magic world, he still felt a bit melancholic facing a future where non-humans would emerge endlessly. If he remembered correctly, there seemed to be some beings here who called themselves gods. John was numb. Dealing with a death god in the magic world was troublesome enough for him, and now there were other gods. Even at some point in the future, a purple sweet potato essence would appear, launch a public welfare campaign to reduce carbon emissions, and finally snap his fingers to wipe out half the population of the entire universe. Thinking of his lifespan, which could rival the big guy under the Black Lake, the more he looked at it, the more it seemed like a candle in the wind. And there was a crucial matter. How many years had passed since he came to this world? Those plot lines were fragmented and intermittent, and he basically didn't remember much. After all, who would repeatedly study some past memories after attending Hogwarts at the age of 11? As for why he only found out now, one could only say that he was the one who took the lead in manufacturing the first television in the magic world. The only good news was probably that his development time over the past 20 years hadn't been wasted. His strength was the best guarantee. He just didn't know if his magic could withstand the purple sweet potato essence's snap. Expelliarmus should be able to dismantle the Infinity Gauntlet, right? Thinking of this, he glanced at the empty house devoid of human presence. A year ago, his parents and sister moved to America due to work. Thinking of his family, John stroked his chin and mused, I remember Dad seemed to have invested in a weapons supplier called Hammer Industries. He always felt this name was somewhat familiar. It seemed to be selling weapons, and the Stark family was in the weapons business. Was this Hammer Industries his competitor? Some mail had accumulated at home. In this era when the internet was starting to develop, there were still many people who preferred using physical letters over emails. For example, John's uncle's family, who had territory in Russia. He took out the yellowed letter from the mailbox. Ding dong. Just as he was about to open it and take a look, the doorbell rang in the house that no one had visited for a year. John opened the door curiously. With his family not around, who would come here? Putting down the envelope, he went to open the door. He stopped when his finger touched the doorknob. In his keen magic perception, someone not simple had arrived outside. Ordinary people's combat power was between 0 and 1, while the one outside was at least level 3. While he was thinking, the doorbell kept ringing, accompanied by a very anxious, tearful voice. Is anyone there? Please open the door. It was a woman. The helpless voice with a Slavic accent, like a drowning kitten, made people feel pity and eager to open the door. Just then, the screeching sound of tires rubbing against the ground was heard outside, along with unfriendly shouts and curses. You're running, huh? A man's voice was heard. Immediately after, The woman outside let out a gasp. Slap. A crisp slap, most likely landing on the woman's face. The woman was still trying to get the homeowner to open the door and save her. No, don't. I don't want to go back. The miserable woman used both hands and feet, resisting the strong man. Separated by a door, it was heaven and hell. The sleeping beagle was startled awake and got up with a jolt, its drool almost dripping onto the blanket. The white owl looked at it disdainfully. John knew the other party was coming for him, but he still opened the door. It wasn't out of great kindness, but having someone die outside was quite troublesome. The sound of the door opening attracted attention. Two scoundrels who were clearly gangsters but still wore suits and ties were bullying a beautiful red-haired woman. The woman had the pale skin of a Slavic person, wore an office lady outfit, and a hint of white was revealed through the torn buttons, making her look pitiful. Get lost, kid. You'd better close the door. The man with a Mexican accent, looking fierce, pointed at John and gave the order. Looking at these two full-health hoodlums whose health bars were like candles in the wind, John looked at the woman's pleading eyes and couldn't help but marvel at her acting skills. I'm sorry, but at Hogwarts, there's a magic called the mind-reading spell. This exquisite acting, in John's eyes, had a strong sense of incongruity. It was like two little rabbits dancing in front of a lioness. However, the necessary steps still needed to be followed. John brewed up his acting skills. He raised his finger and pointed at the house across the street, saying casually, "There's a heavyweight boxer in the house across the street who gets up at 4 every morning to work out. If you want to keep your teeth and jaw intact before retirement, it's best to leave now." His words stunned the two arrogant men. As pimps who could only show off in front of women, they were clearly somewhat at a loss against this kind of threat. Even more coincidentally, the boxer who had finished training and returned happened to be passing by outside. Compared to him, the two looked like skinny poles. Assessing the gap between themselves and the other party, the pimp left a harsh remark. "You remember this?" Afraid of tasting a professional boxer's fist, they quickly ran to their car, started the engine, and left. "Hero saves the beauty script completed," the woman muttered inwardly. Next, she needed to get in touch with this person who might be related to the attack on Stark. Thinking up to this point. "Thank you so much, you saved me," the woman thanked him repeatedly. She staggered to her feet, radiating a sense of resilience. She said fearfully, "I was kidnapped by them. They are pimps and wanted me to serve men." Apparently, no matter where, this was a business. John seemed greatly moved upon hearing this, and there was a hint of cunning in the woman's eyes, as if she had succeeded. The next second, John took out his wallet, pulled out some green bills, and sympathetically handed them to the woman. "That's so pitiful, you should hurry home then." Woman, ? This development isn't right. My name is Natasha Romanoff. I am a professional agent. In my career, failure is death to me. So I have lived until now, never failing. The full name of the organization I serve is the Strategic Homeland Intervention, Enforcement and Logistics Division, abbreviated as SHIELD. Because the full name is too long, we prefer to call it SHIELD. This is a special unit that handles various strange events. The things we are responsible for are major events that threaten human safety. But today, I felt so tricky for the first time. The reason is a person I need to evaluate. He is dying from palladium poisoning and has started to let himself go. A dignified billionaire, he went to participate in a car race. As his assistant, I didn't expect this move from him. Even so, the bad thing is that during the race, someone attacked him. This almost caused this future consultant and financial backer of SHIELD to die regretting it. My boss asked me to investigate the reason behind it. Coincidentally, the attacker was Russian. And that day at the Monaco party, there happened to be someone with Russian influence. Watson Wick, a successful businessman and a dangerous person listed in global official organizations. And he disappeared from SHIELD's surveillance. SHIELD then focused on his son, someone whose information in the database is basically zero. For some reason, I don't want anyone else to participate in investigating this matter. To get close to him, I deliberately walked alone at night and was targeted by a local pimp organization. Then I took the opportunity to escape, running 2 blocks to Privet Drive. I was preparing to approach the target person as a weak woman who would arouse protective instincts. According to the data, the target person is 30 years old, single, and has Slavic blood. So, speaking with a Slavic accent would make the target person feel a sense of familiarity. Against those men, this always works well. This is a kind of confidence. Although beauty is not my most powerful weapon, it is also the most obvious one. But now, Natasha Romanoff, SHIELD Level 7 agent, holding 1,000 pounds in my hand, like a prostitute selling door to door. The key point is, I was shut out. The door was closed again, leaving Natasha in disarray in the wind. The tightly closed door showed no intention of opening a second time, so she immediately changed her strategy. Agents are never short of acting skills. Her eyes immediately turned red, and she tightly clutched the £1,000 in her hand, knocking on the door again and again with strength and persistence. Her image was like those strong girls who were humiliated by money. If the door doesn't open, the knocking won't stop. This trick was indeed very effective. The door was opened. The slight hint of smugness in Natasha's eyes was well hidden. Just as she was about to speak, John, who reappeared, said with a surprised look, "You don't want it? Then give it back to me." The banknotes in her hand hadn't even gotten warm before John took them back himself. After taking them, John muttered, "He doesn't even want free money, how strange." Closing the door again. A whole bunch of words from Natasha were stuck in her throat. Just before she could piece together words that would be censored, her strong agent qualities once again allowed her to maintain her goddess image. Taking a deep breath, the tenderness on her face disappeared, replaced by a cold and beautiful look. Adjusting her soft red hair, if you look closely, her left hand has 2 fingers pressing on her ear, where there is a hidden earphone. "I think we need to change our strategy." "That kid is as slippery as his father," a rhythmic voice came from the earphone. "Coulson has been working for his father's company for 10 years and hasn't gotten much contact. Lay your cards on the table with him, make him be sensible, and hopefully find out if that Russian has anything to do with him, as well as the whereabouts of his father." "All right. This attack has made my direct superior a bit restless. That playboy, in the Avengers plan, his priority is the highest. My applying to be Tony Stark's new assistant, besides evaluating whether he fits the Avengers plan, the most important thing is to protect him. Regarding this, I must say something. Disclaimer: Tony Stark's high priority absolutely has nothing to do with his father, who is one of the founders of S.H.I.E.L.D. Natasha could only accept her fate. She knocked on the door again. But this time, the door did not open. Natasha frowned, realizing something was wrong. She stopped abruptly just as she was about to touch the doorknob. In the information about this house, there was mention of a strange force repelling outsiders. Natasha went to the window and looked in. The curtains were not drawn, and the window was empty inside. 1 black and 1 white owl turned their heads, tilted their heads, and stared at the woman climbing the window. They seemed to be wondering if this woman was a peeping Tom. That person ran away. Even a professional agent like Natasha couldn't help but feel a surge of anger from the bottom of her heart at this moment. Unfortunately, the 2 pimps who had left came back again in that yellow Chevrolet. One of them ran across the lawn, reaching out to grab Natasha's beautiful red hair. He was as rough with her as he was with the ladies in the red light district. Only this time he had provoked the wrong person. This was no weak lady. She could even be said to be one of the most dangerous women in the world. The Slavic woman who had been meek and bullied just a short while ago was now looking for a place to vent her anger. By the time Natasha left, the 2 pieces of trash were almost disabled pieces of trash. Report: target has disappeared. Contact with target failed. 13, 57th Street, Manhattan. As a wizard, it is reasonable to have a flu network at home. That is a wizard's mode of travel. Its characteristic is that you can arrive at the fireplace whose name you speak from another fireplace. Very convenient. And it has a benefit. No one can discover you. Travel thousands of miles without leaving your home. It is truly an essential item for home travel. In the warmly decorated house, a blue flame burned in the fireplace where no firewood was placed. A figure walked out from inside. This place is located in the bustling Manhattan area of New York. It is also John's parents' house. By magic, he successfully achieved cross-country travel without leaving his home. In this wealthy area where every inch of land is precious, to have such a large house, he has to thank his dad's continuous efforts. As an unmotivated child with a manor in London, John sometimes feels really guilty. As for the woman who showed off her acting skills in front of him, John could guess her identity. An agent. To be honest, given his family's special circumstances, having an agent doesn't seem strange. When he was still in school, at least 20 agents took turns monitoring his dad outside their door every day. The strange thing was that the agent was coming for him. John considered himself to be very low-key. Most of his time was spent in the magic world, and he rarely appeared in front of muggles. It's just that he doesn't know if it's a coincidence or something, but as soon as he came back, he encountered this scene. It is undeniable that the other party is indeed very beautiful, but unfortunately, John is not the kind of person who would be tempted by beauty. Walking into this house in New York, John looked around. No one. John came here and did not see his parents. This made him feel strange. Although his parents had jobs, they shouldn't be away from home at this time. And his sister. They were not here. John was thinking. He looked up. There was movement. And the movement was not small. A golden ring with sparks appeared out of thin air. At the other end of the ring appeared a bald man wearing a yellow robe. "Hello, Wizard King." The newcomer greeted John. That casual tone gave off a sense of unhurried confidence. John saw the newcomer. In that magnificent world. Among the impressive characters, this person is definitely included. Supreme Mage, Ancient One. Ancient One, the mysterious guardian of this world, the Supreme Mage. Information John could remember flashed through his mind. This was an existence many called the ceiling of combat strength. He sized up the person opposite him. Ancient One was also observing this existence who had changed the magic world. This world has magic, and magic is divided into two types. One type is mages like those at Camartage, where Ancient One resides, who absorb energy and use it through rituals and spirit. They can absorb energy from dimensions beyond this world, using higher-level environmental energy for more advanced rituals. It's similar to a transaction, obtaining energy from gods like the Vishanti. Thus, they can perform teleportation and summon attacks from outer dimensions. The other type is wizards. Unlike mages, the magic they use is more based on subjective power. Mages have fixed calculations and costs for what they expend, while wizard magic relies on subjective power, making it stranger and more wondrous. Their wands are like the mage's sling rings, used as mediums to stabilize spellcasting. Wizard spellcasting is bizarre. There's magic that makes people vomit slugs, and also evil magic that can instantly strip away life. The mage's teleportation and the wizard's apparition. One is more stable, the other has stronger mobility. The disarming charm that takes away weapons, the mind-reading spell that can read minds, transfiguration that changes form. Some things that even mages require powerful magic to accomplish can be done by wizards. They are different from each other, yet similar. The strength of mages compared to wizards probably lies in the powerful inner hearts forged on those snowy mountains. And wizards' emotions are far richer and more extreme than ordinary people's. Their energy also becomes stronger with fluctuations. A long time ago, young wizards who couldn't release their power could have the dark emotions generated within them transform into a powerful and terrifying monster. An obscurus. Those parasitized by this kind of monster are called obscurials. That kind of dark power is an existence similar to the dark dimension. Both mages and wizards are mysterious existences in the magic world. Mages bear the mission of resisting the invasion of the dark dimension because wizards are easily assimilated by the dark dimension. This is both a protection and a precaution. Wizards have the potential to generate dark energy themselves, and sensitive emotions are more likely to become the basis for being tempted and transformed. Mages and wizards have a tacit understanding not to interact with each other. Except for a few people, not many remember the mysterious existences who also use magic. This tacit understanding was maintained for a long time, until the arrival of the 21st century, after which she began to lose some control. This included variables in the magic world that could not be observed. In Ancient One's observations, some changes made her unable to confirm if her plans could proceed smoothly. There were 5 years until the appearance of the next Supreme Mage. She needed some powerful existences to help her get through this period. And this kind of power was hard to find in Camartage. Although those mages had decent combat power, they could not meet Ancient One's requirements. She needed an existence with powerful strength and a firm heart to resist existences from beyond this world. Ancient One chose to go to the magic world, where they had not interacted for a long time, to find the wizard she believed to be the most powerful. Albus Dumbledore, the former principal of Hogwarts, a wise and loving wizard. No one was more suitable than him. His heart was firm, and he possessed the wizard's most powerful wand. The result deviated. "My friend Dumbledore recommended you to me." Ancient One revealed a mysterious smile, as if carrying many secrets. She said, "Young Wizard King, John Wick." Her eyes held scrutiny. That powerful and wise wizard was actually banished to drift at sea. And the one who defeated him was the person before her eyes. The Wizard King. A title as noble as the mage's supreme mage, the leader of all wizards. His youth was surprising. Ancient One perceived that within the Wizard King's body, there was something difficult to observe. Dumbledore. Mentioning his former principal, John's scrutiny of Ancient One also gained vigilance. However, John's lips curved into a meaningful smile. He said, "State your purpose, Supreme Mage, Ancient One." Tit for tat. You act mysterious, so I'll act mysterious back. Supreme Mage. John's gaze paused slightly on the eye-shaped necklace the other person wore. That was the Eye of Agamotto. Inside it was a treasure capable of seeing the future and manipulating time. Just the future. Who can't predict the future? Among the string of prefixes to the name Wizard King, prophet was just one, and he had even defeated another prophet. "I've come to seek help." Ancient One smiled slightly. Alienating the ruler of the magic world was a foolish choice, and the wiser chose to give enough respect. She said, "Wizard King, this world is being coveted." Coveted? John did recall some adventures from his school days. Having mastered time and soul taboos, he could sometimes encounter places ordinary wizards wouldn't know about. Ancient One's attitude surprised him somewhat. He had thought the title of Supreme Mage would make her react to him, but now it seemed one couldn't underestimate these monsters who had lived for hundreds of years. "Yes." Ancient One nodded. She extended an arm that was excessively pale even for a white person. The mage's magic was displayed in her hand. First, there was darkness. Ancient One's voice rang out, full of mystery. At the beginning of this universe, there was chaos. Suddenly, a blinding white light burst open the darkness. Infinite light and planets erupted from within, extending outwards without boundaries. The Big Bang gave birth to 6 elemental crystals. Amidst the explosion, 6 brilliant gems of different colors slowly landed in various parts of the universe. The ground beneath John's feet also changed from darkness to a blue planet. And this planet was connected to many places. There were barren, cold planets, and places like a celestial realm. More places came into view. One of the green gems slowly settled on the treasure on Ancient One's chest. Ancient One paced in the living room, pointed a hand casually at the universe, and black space was born. The duty of Camartage is to protect Earth from being coveted by external mysteries. And in this universe, there are some dimensions that covet this place. They long to invade here and swallow this place. To resist external coveting, Camartage has established 3 sanctums on this planet. She raised her hand again and pulled the blue planet from beneath John's feet. Hong Kong, London, New York. 3 points on the planet gradually lit up, forming 3 interconnected golden magic circles that enveloped the entire planet. And the Supreme Mage, as the leader of the mages, needs to possess powerful strength to guard all of this. Her hands crossed into a gesture, and the Eye of Agamotto on her chest slowly opened. A gem emitting a mysterious green light appeared inside, overlapping with the image of the Infinity Stones. John stared at that thing. He could feel a tremor from the time magic within him. "Time," he said aloud. Ancient One was somewhat surprised to hear that he knew, as wizards didn't have many records about the Infinity Stones. She nodded and said, "The Time Stone, one of the 6 Infinity Stones in this world. It is also the treasure the Supreme Mage uses to protect this place." The universe and the darkness vanished, leaving only the beautiful gem-like planet slowly rotating between the two of them. A future crisis is approaching, and this stone, along with the next Supreme Mage, will face those. Ancient One looked at John and said sincerely, "I need your help, Wizard King." "Me?" John raised his hand somewhat casually, touching the magic image created by the mage. His finger passed through it. "You are more powerful, aren't you?" He had only just managed to get free time from the throne and busy governmental affairs of the Magic Kingdom. "This world is becoming chaotic. It's a crisis." Ancient One looked at John solemnly. "No one can escape." "A crisis?" John raised an eyebrow. Knowing that Tony Stark existed in this world, if he guessed correctly, the Avengers would also appear. That was an organization of entirely non-human superheroes. Shouldn't the crisis be solved by them? "That Supreme Mage can't solve it?" John asked skeptically. "As I said, this world is becoming chaotic, and some trajectories that should have been set are deviating." Ancient One shook her head and said, "Even I cannot know everything. I also cannot be sure whether the Supreme Mage who was originally determined will be changed." Ancient One, who had always controlled the future, found this situation tricky. Her gaze followed John as she said in a deep voice, "This world has become chaotic since the 2 convergences 10 years ago. A force is dragging the world, making it difficult to observe." John's hand paused, and his expression became a little strange. World overlap, convergence. Could it be something he had encountered before? He withdrew his hand from the planet. A black substance flashed on his fingertip, the planet exploded, and finally turned into nothingness and disappeared. It seemed magic could also interfere with each other. Having reached a conclusion, John turned his head to look at Ancient One. He suppressed the strangeness in his heart. "Need my help?" he said indifferently. "Is it a request or an exchange?" John met Ancient One's slightly startled expression. Although it was brief, it was still caught. He smiled slightly and said, "The law of alchemy, there's no free gold. You need insurance to insure the future supreme mage. Fair trade, equivalent exchange, right?" The law of alchemy. This was something the Wizard King, who ruled the Magic Kingdom, often said. In the Magic Kingdom, the Wizard King also symbolized fairness. Ancient One heard the request and fell into contemplation. A trade. She could feel that this Wizard King possessed extraordinary power. It wasn't that the Wizard King was more powerful than the Supreme Mage, but rather the uniqueness brought by a magical system different from Camartage. For example, opening a safe. Two methods. One is to open it violently. The other is to use the correct password. But for wizards, they had a third way. Make the safe open itself. With a spell, even if they didn't know the password, the safe would input the password itself. Aside from certain counterspells, that unlocking spell could open any lock in the world. As long as it was a lock. It was like a rule. Someone makes the rules, and someone must follow them. The rule in the magic world is, I say the spell, and you have to open the lock. As mages who also used magic, they were more inclined to borrow power and pull other rules for temporary use. The wizard's rules were inevitably applicable in a world with magic. During that period of time she couldn't be sure of, many variables would arise. The predetermined trajectory was being shifted and needed to be maintained. The only one who could offer help was this Wizard King. Because the unobservable nature about him meant he wouldn't be interfered with by that chaos. Ancient One made up her mind. She looked at John and asked directly, "What do you want?" John didn't speak. He just opened his right hand in front of Ancient One. A dark, smoke-like, and strangely bizarre substance flowed between his fingers. Seeing this, Ancient One narrowed her eyes. "This is not something you should be touching, Wizard King." She recognized what it was and warned him. That was dark energy. And in the magic world, it was called an obscurus. Oh! John leaned back, and the four legs of the living room chair tapped as it moved behind him and stopped. Under Ancient One's gaze, John's raised hand suddenly turned pale, with black lines like veins appearing on it. The dark energy became active. But within a breath, his hand returned to its normal color. "This is impossible." Ancient One stared at John, a hint of shock flashing in her eyes. As a mage who had observed and protected this world for hundreds of years, she knew clearly the consequences of touching dark energy. Even when she used this power herself, she had to be careful not to be eroded by the dark energy. John pulled out a black reverse scale pendant from under his clothes. A bicorn's reverse scale. The knowledgeable Ancient One recognized the item and said solemnly, "You have been in contact with darkness." Bicorns are the opposite of pure unicorns. They love the unclean and also worship darkness. This was one of John's alchemy works. During his student days, due to certain events, he became an obscurus and controlled this power. As he grew stronger, the magic of Hogwarts began to be unable to make him more powerful. He needed a new pursuit. "It's not just me." John gently blew on the dark energy, and the snake-like dark energy flew towards Ancient One. Upon reaching Ancient One, a mark appeared on her forehead. "The moment you walked in, I felt it." John said meaningfully, "You are the same as me." "Not the same." Ancient One needed enough time to protect this world. But John actively sought contact. "How about it, let's make a trade," John smiled mysteriously. The methods he had discovered himself for contacting it were far inferior to the methods accumulated by Camartage over many years. Ancient One, exposed, didn't become angry. Since stepping into this house, this young Wizard King had created many mysteries for her. The Supreme Mage, her strength was matched by her intelligent mind. Giving up the method of contacting dark energy in exchange for a powerful ally. Not just for 5 years, but in the days to come, it would also have a huge effect. The future Supreme Mages would also understand this point. "Okay," her thoughts turned. Ancient One smiled faintly. "I am willing to trade with you, Wizard King. You won't regret it. I can guarantee this is your most profitable trade." John floated on the chair, defying gravity. He extended his right hand, adorned with a silver ring and an emerald ring, and smiled. "Our trade is done." Ancient One's hand met his, and she said with a knowing smile, "I think so too." For some reason, seeing that smile, John felt like he would have a lot of trouble in the future. Ancient One raised her left hand, and a black book resembling a diary appeared. It contained Ancient One's magical knowledge, including methods to draw energy from the dark dimension. John took the small book, his eyelids twitching. This black diary somehow reminded him of a certain noseless fellow. "I have a question I'd like to ask you. It's a bit presumptuous, just a small personal curiosity." John looked at Ancient One's face and asked, "How old are you?" That is indeed a presumptuous question, asking a woman's age, not quite the British gentleman's demeanor. Ancient One smiled slightly. "Let me think, I should be over 500 years old." "That is indeed a long time. My teacher, Nicholas Flamel, lived to be 665 years old. He could have lived longer." John mentioned the teacher who had enlightened him, his tone a little low. The elixir of life could give him life, but it couldn't stop aging. A constantly aging body and a continuously extending life, this was a torment. Nicholas Flamel, who could have continued to live, ultimately chose to stop using the elixir of life. As Dumbledore said, death for him was just going to bed after a busy day. "Sorry for letting you feel my bad mood." John came back to his senses and apologized. "I'm just a little melancholic about the future. Living too long, sometimes it feels more like a curse." Ancient One looked deeply at John, noticing his peculiarity. She opened a portal, the direction leading to Camartage, and said to John, "Camartage is always welcome to your arrival, Wizard King. Perhaps one day I will travel here, and I will bring you a bottle of mead. It was something a friend of mine liked." John showed the Supreme Mage due respect. "Goodbye, Supreme Mage." The portal closed. John said to himself, "Immortality, huh? Living too long doesn't necessarily make one happy. Friends dying one by one, young children turning into old people, beloved family members becoming bones. After that, it's more like a traveler, experiencing one person after another around, but ultimately unable to stay by their side. Forget it, that's still too far away for me." Shaking off the negative emotions, putting everything else aside, just considering future alien invasions, John wondered if he could even live to a natural death. It's better to cherish the present. John turned around and looked around his house. Calling it home, this was actually only his second time here. The Magic Kingdom was busy, and he often communicated using owls. Wandering around this unfamiliar house, he pushed open a door. The golden snitch inside quickly tried to fly out, but John caught it with quick hands. The small ball struggled in his hand for a while before becoming still. This was a hall of honor. Don't misunderstand, John wasn't that narcissistic. This was his dad's. Although his dad was a muggle, he was incredibly obsessed with things from the magic world. From various editions of the Prophet Daily to Quidditch matchballs, they were all part of his collection. John put the escaped golden snitch back into the display case, his brow furrowing as he looked at the dust on the glass. Given his dad's personality, who cleaned the room every day, there shouldn't be any dust here. They've been gone for a while. What could be worth leaving for so long? It wasn't impossible that his parents had gone on a spontaneous trip. John closed the door and went to the next room. Going up to the second floor, he came to the door with a little bear stuck on it. He knocked on the door, but there was no one inside. He opened the door and entered. A soft and comfortable large bed invited one to roll around on it. Near the window sill, a chubby stuffed bear quietly leaned there. 3 photo frames were on the table. John picked up one of the moving photos. It was taken with a magical camera. It showed an angelic girl with golden hair and blue eyes, wearing a white gauze dress like a princess and a wreath of jasmine on her head. On her wrist, she wore a bracelet resembling a diadem. The girl was 15 years old, holding the hand of the black-haired young man beside her with one hand, and hugging a brown little bear in her other arm. Seeing this photo, he smiled gently. This was his sister, Ariana Wick. There was also a moving family photo on the table. The last photo should be his sister's graduation photo. It wasn't a magical photo and didn't move. John's gaze swept over it and stopped. He reached out and picked up the photo, staring at the side of his sister, who had grown into a beautiful and charming young woman. That was a red-haired girl, also wearing a scholar's robe and very close to his sister. He recognized that face. This morning, this woman was still a poor female office worker kidnapped by a pimp. Why was that female agent with his sister? In the valuable land of Long Island, Tony Stark, poisoned and not long for this world, stared at the screen. Jarvis had hacked into S.H.I.E.L.D.'s database. Relevant information was constantly flashing on the screen as it searched. He didn't want his problems to be left behind after his death and affect others. "Found you." The screen froze on Manhattan. Tony got up, and mechanical arms helped him put on his armor. From the mansion on Long Island, Iron Man launched. The agent who tested him, the family members who were not at home, and the classmate who was with his sister. All sorts of clues told John that this was not a normal matter. He still needed some clues. He wondered if that woman was still in London. He pondered whether he should go and catch that woman to ask her. Interrogation was difficult, but Veritaserum and mind-reading spell could solve all of this. However, the most pressing matter was to confirm where they had gone. John picked up the phone at home, and he hesitated for a long time. What was Dad's phone number? Forgive him for liking to use owls in the magic world. He was also accustomed to using owls for correspondence in his daily life. It seemed that since he came to this world, he had never used a phone, so he basically never asked for a number. The long unseen world of technology made him feel a bit unfamiliar. Fortunately, before he transmigrated, technology had developed to the point where everyone had a mobile phone, and people basically didn't carry money when going out. Although there were endless black technologies in the Marvel world, civilian technology was largely not much different. Putting down the photo frame, John prepared to continue looking for clues. It was a good holiday, but why did it feel increasingly troublesome? He sighed. The holiday had just begun, making him foresee that this holiday would be very troublesome. He hoped it wouldn't ruin the holiday. Leaving his sister's room, he saw his own room. It was clean and tidy, just with fewer things. A floor-to-ceiling window that offered a view of the Manhattan streetscape. This view alone was worth $1 million. Dad has made quite a lot of money doing business these past years. John paused in front of the floor-to-ceiling window for a while and breathed a puff of air onto the glass. He extended his finger and drew on the glass. A strange symbol resembling an eye was drawn on the glass. This was a detection spell, which could detect if a house had been invaded. It was a very practical magic. After walking around, John appeared in the living room. He drew out his wand. On the black wand, there were protrusions like tree knots. Elder wood, thestral tail hair core. This wand was the most powerful wand. In the magic world, it once belonged to the most powerful wizard, and John had taken the wand from its owner's hand. It had a famous name, Old Wand. Waving the old wand in the center of the living room, something like golden powder sprayed from the wand, covering the ground and printing out footprints. Those footprints started moving. One pair was large leather shoes, and the other was thin-heeled high heels. They moved from the living room to the second floor, arriving at his sister's room. From the room, a pair of canvas shoe footprints appeared. The large leather shoes walked back and forth several times and also went to the trophy room. Finally, they went out, and these footprints disappeared. John stared at the spot where the footprints disappeared, narrowing his eyes thoughtfully. They were quite in a hurry. Not long after the footprints disappeared, more footprints appeared. This time it was different. It looked like a man's footprints. Leather shoes appeared at the door, walking around the house freely, as if looking for something. This was clearly not any of the family members. The owner of the footprints walked into the trophy room. He stopped at the cabinet where the golden snitch was placed. John guessed that the other party had opened the cabinet, which was why the golden snitch came out. That footprint almost went through every place in the house, not even sparing John's room. In the end, he returned to the living room and left. John fell into contemplation. Who was this person, and what was his relationship with that agent? Just as he was thinking, the light above his head began to flicker. The detection spell he left behind reacted. John looked up. His brow twitched, and his intuition told him something was happening. Without hesitation, he waved the wand in his hand. Protego! A silver iron armor phantom emerged and enveloped him. The living room glass exploded, and a figure painted in red and gold flew towards John. The iron armor phantom collided with the armor, bringing its movement to a halt. It completed a backflip in the air and used the thrusters in its palms and soles to stabilize its body. The armor landed in a superhero style. The iron armor charm had the effect of defense and repulsion. Even a speeding car would be bounced away. The person quickly stood up and raised his arm. A laser shot out from the armor's palm. John's body turned and disappeared. Apparition. When he reappeared, he was already behind the armor, raising his right hand and clenching it forcefully. Summoning charm. It was like a large hand grasping the armor, a strange force binding the opponent, lifting and squeezing it. From the start of the battle until now, only a little over 10 seconds had passed. As John was about to crush this uninvited guest, he saw the familiar color scheme and couldn't help but be startled. Iron Man. As soon as he spoke, he saw the shoulder of the armor opposite open, launching a small bomb flying towards him. Relatio. The wand sprayed sparks, accurately hitting the missile, making the missile change direction and fly towards the second floor. The explosion came, causing him to involuntarily release the magic holding the armor. Looking at the wall on the second floor that had been blown open, he felt a surge of anger. Even a superhero, breaking into someone's house like this, would be beaten up. All right, I think Ariana will be very angry. Jarvis, analyze this guy. John was preparing to get serious, while Tony Stark was greatly startled. In the perception of this physics genius, there was no such thing as magic. MIT didn't teach him how to break magic either. He couldn't understand for the time being why that guy holding a chopstick could make a missile change direction. "Sir, identity is locked. Hack in directly." As a playboy, Tony was never someone who could be bound by rules. As the most powerful intelligence system, Jarvis had supercomputing capabilities. Not long after Tony gave the order, it was as simple as opening a binary lock to hack into the SHIELD database. John Wick, male, born in 1980, British. The information was pitifully scarce. This was the first time Tony had encountered this. "I feel like that kid seems angry," Tony said to Jarvis. John's face made it difficult for him to associate the other party with being 30 years old. In the brief exchange, he had to pay attention to the threat posed by the chopstick in the other party's hand. He raised his hands, and the laser cannons charged and fired. This indicated he was going all out. Protego. The three essentials of the magic world. Protego, Expelliarmus, apparition. That strange phantom appeared again, and even the laser colliding with it was bounced back. Tony was hit, flying out directly and hitting the Wick family's wall, his whole body caving in. What the hell is this? Damn it! Tony had no room to breathe. He saw the other party wave his wand, and the chair beside him bent and turned into a brown python wrapping around his arm. The horrifying scene made him break out in a cold sweat. He grabbed the python and threw it away. In the air, the python turned back into a chair and shattered upon falling. John narrowed his eyes and said coldly, "I don't think you're a lost bird that flew into the wrong house." "Damn it, that charming London accent, is he a noble?" Tony complained about the other party's accent. Americans all quite liked this. Controlling the armor, he got up from the wall. His mask popped open, revealing the billionaire face that John had just seen that morning. "Yes, I specifically came to find you, Mr. London Noble." The billionaire poisoned by palladium knew he couldn't deal with this person and spoke harshly, "I don't care what tricks you have, just come at me." Tony, who was already not long for this world, was attacked yesterday, so his mood naturally wouldn't be very good. Fueled by the alcohol he had drunk, he simply came to deal with the trouble. He had already made arrangements for his subsequent inheritance. The company would be left to Pepper, and the armor would be given to Rhodes. Since that was the case, he couldn't let the potential threat continue to harm his family. Whiplash's background was not simple. It was very likely that a competing company sent him to kill him. Stark Industries and Hammer Industries were once rivals competing for government contracts. After he announced the closure of the weapons division, he was targeted by certain people because of the Iron Man suit. And the beneficiary of all this was Hammer Industries. Among the shareholders of Hammer Industries, there was someone with ties to Russia. That person was Watson Wick, John's father. Everything seemed logical. Kill Tony Stark, Stark Industries stock would plummet, and as the largest shareholder of Hammer Industries, the Wick Group could make a fortune. Furthermore, given that he had a conflict with the Wick Group, it was entirely possible for the forces they possessed to eliminate him. It was logical, and S.H.I.E.L.D.'s information gave Tony great confidence. In the database of that black director, the Wick family was included. All the evidence indicated that if Tony wanted his friends to be safe after his death, he had to eliminate the threat posed by the Wick Group. The aftereffects of the celebratory alcohol buzz made him simply go ahead and do it. However, the intelligence was wrong. The person in charge was not at the Wick home, but there was a young son. When Tony opened his mask, John could smell the alcohol, the scent of who knew how many bottles of tequila he had drunk. His expression was strange. "How much have you drunk?" "What?" Tony said with the smell of alcohol, his words unrestrained, provoking, "Your mother doesn't let you drink? You've successfully made me very angry, Tony Stark." John narrowed his eyes and waved his wand. "I'll make you sober up. Expelliarmus." Red light turned into lightning at the tip of the wand, hitting the Iron Man suit and making it continuously retreat under the impact. Tony reacted quickly, putting on his mask to protect his face and preparing to face the enemy. Under the red lightning, the armor was forcibly opened, and pieces of equipment stripped away from his body and fell off. Tony, who was resisting, originally thought he was going to die, but he felt a chill. Cool wind blew in through the shattered glass. Tony stared blankly downwards. The Iron Man suit on his body lay scattered on the ground. And yesterday, during his revelry, he had even demonstrated how to use the toilet while wearing the Iron Man suit. For convenience, he wasn't even wearing clothes. So, he was stark naked.